All right. So tonight, well, first off, I want to do a better job. Yeah, this is all new to me, guys. So I'm going to get a better handle, better hang of things as we go on here. I don't want to do much of overlapping, especially when it's stuff that I feel is important enough for you guys to get a grasp on. I kind of want to hone in on one major topic, and this way you can go into tomorrow's session, the session after that, and put it to work. See if you see what we discussed the night prior. It's funny because each and every day there's flow out there, and today would have been a perfect night for talking about the difference between the spec action and the real action out there. I know a lot of questions regarding, I keep forgetting the symbol, but deep in the money buying, in the money buying, out of the money buying. So, it probably would have been a good match if we spoke about that. We can, but today what I want, right, MOXE. Today what I want to focus on is something I think is more important. And then, we'll probably leave that for the next, talking about the different type of action and, what's more appealing, what tells us what about specific order flow. We'll save that for Wednesday. But we'll talk a little bit about it today. And I want to also look at, some of the top bets that we saw today off the top bet list and put what I'm going to share about the flow today. We'll put that to work and see if you guys can see what I'm talking about in regards to some of the top action out there today. All right. So what I did to help us all out, I did this last time too, so we could all follow along. And maybe the steam room crew wants to, maybe do a better job of putting this all in one spot. I tried to get it all in one spot, but I'm tech illiterate, as you guys know. Hold on. Yep. All right. So this is basically the 2 pages. We'll start with the first is going to be the main topic for today. All right. Let me put this bigger here so you guys could see. Oh, that's what I'm going to do. Hold on. The hell are we looking at Bitcoin for? So used to having a chart up. All right. And I think once you guys, I think this is something you need to get a hang of. You need to get the hang of. This is something you may feel that you know already, but it takes a little bit of time, and this will help a great deal in deciphering not only what sweeps, what action is actionable, but the difference between actionable orders, for whatever you may be looking for. Okay. And a lot of terminology here, right? You hear me use the word clean so often, the spot so often, because these things have been crucial for me as over the years, like I mentioned to you guys, I started off just with unusual options activity, kind of like what the Nigerians do on a day-to-day basis. And me tinkering with that philosophy is how I got to where I am today. And these key ingredients, what a clean sweeper is and what it means. So you guys can not only see it with your own eyes, but understand, why it's so important. Initial activity, right? I mean, every webinar, you guys hear me talk about that. And it's not that it's the only actionable order flow out there, but that's the goods. That's where you find the sweet spot and some of the biggest winners. That's where a lot of the risk is taken out of playing off that flow, right? So obviously that's important. And, repeat activity, I mean, we see so much of it. And being able to distinguish the difference between, initial activity, at a quality spot and repeat activity late in a trend, I think ultimately, is going to decide whether you find a way to make money out of this or not. I think, and we'll talk about it more, chasing repeat activity, I think, is a downfall of many traders who trade off flow. And we'll talk about why. All right, so let's get started with clean sweeper activity and what it actually means, right? And I'll go over, some examples, some of the details of why it's important and stuff like that, okay? Let me get this here. All right, so we got, basically, we know what a sweep is, right? It's an aggressive bet buyer, right, of puts or calls, or seller of puts or calls in the option market, okay? What a clean sweep is obviously an aggressive bet that meets all the characteristics, like basically the criteria that over my experience, I've looked for in order flow that allows me to have the most confidence I possibly can have that I have an idea of that player's bias. Okay, so if you remember, we spoke about last week that no matter what, unless we know these guys personally, right? Unless you know the fund who's sweeping or the player who's sweeping, we really don't know the true intent of these players ever. And that's the fact of the matter, okay? But what I've learned is that by looking at specific characteristics in the order flow, okay, along with a couple other things we're going to talk about today, you can come as close to that point of knowing what that player is trying to do with that order as possible. All right. And what it also allows you to disregard and push away a lot of the noise, a lot of the other flow that basically makes up, like we said, 95% of the flow on a daily basis is mess, is chop, right? It's just, there's no directional bias out of it, okay? So it allows you to a lot more easily push that data and information aside because you're zoning in and looking for the cleanest of bets. All right, so what are those characteristics? Okay, one, we want the sweep to be aggressive, right? And that's easy to see in the order flow we look at from the data we get from Trade Alert in the Steam Room, because it gets labeled a sweep, and when it sweeps multiple exchanges, you're going to see MULT or multi, depending on who's labeling it, you're going to see that next to the order. So if we go to, what happened here? Okay. Oh, this is yesterday's, but that's okay. This is just as good. It don't matter, right? Let's look at Fridays. I'm sorry. This is what I'm talking about. Multi, right? Multi. Okay? So that's basically telling us that that player swept multiple exchanges. It's an aggressive order, and that's what we're looking for. Because again, we're not looking for a bullish order. We're looking for an aggressive order. That's the most important thing when we're looking at flow. All right? And obviously on the ask or better if we're looking for bullish order flow, right? And primarily that's what, I mean, a buyer, I should say, not bullish because puts, right? Even though, I'm a perma bull at heart, but you know what I mean, right? So when we're looking at calls, we want to see a sweep multiple exchanges and go off at the ask or better. Sometimes they'll go off above ask, right? So we want to make sure we see that. Why? Because if somebody's sweeping calls and is hitting bids, right, that's more likely to be a seller, an aggressive seller of those calls, right? I know a lot of you guys know this already, but you know, it's a key ingredient, okay, to a clean sweep. So for calls for a buyer, we want to see aggressive order that takes out ask or better. Okay. Another thing that I don't know, I don't think a lot of you know I pay attention to. You want to see a pop in the implied volatility off the bet. Okay. Doesn't always work out that way. All right. There was actually an order today that was decent size, met a lot of the other characteristics, but IV went down off that. Okay. A buy of calls it was. So why do we want to see that? Because if it's a bullish bet, not all the time, okay, not all the time. Sometimes if it's deep in the money, you won't get it that big of a pop or any pop in IV. All right. But if it's an aggressive bullish bet, the likelihood is you're going to see a positive IV change. And this is what that would look like. I'm getting lost here. Okay. See the plus right here? Plus 1.6. You see VIV? Minus, right? You see H? Plus. Now, the reason why that's become so important for me, what I started to realize when I paid attention to this stuff, that even though an order went off on the offer, when it had a lower implied vol off that offer, off that order, it ended up being a seller. I end up seeing other orders come in and go off on the bid. The explanation of the trade alert was helpful. Which one's that? Oh, you got it up there? I didn't even see. I'm sorry. Okay, so the easy thing for you guys, right, when you want to see a clean bet, again, we're using the characteristics. When you hear me say the word clean, right, I don't see that about every single order that comes in. All right. And I'll be honest with you guys, a lot of times I'll day trade off sweeper activity that's not clean. More than likely, I won't swing trade it off of it. You understand the difference? And we're going to talk about that more when we talk about time frames and how to use all this stuff. But what I want you guys to focus on now and not jump the gun here, okay, is what are the characteristics that make up what I'm labeling a clean sweep, and start to look for that in order flow and names you like. Okay, because the more action you see that meets this criteria, the better the quality of the action you're picking from. All right. The further you get away from it, right? You see a bet in the name you like, but you know, it doesn't meet this or doesn't meet that. You downgrade the quality of that flow. Okay. And that's what I want you guys to get used to here. All right. So we got a sweep across multiple exchanges, takes out offers, asks, or better. All right. And we looked at an example just to see it again here. You see the trade alert. These are like, you know, these are the alerts we use from the steam room. Okay. Ask, ask, ask. Here, the H down here, above ask, right? So ask or better. Make sense? Okay. Now, the IV, without making it too complicated for you, okay, you want to see a pop in the IV off the order. I wouldn't even focus on the reasons why and the details of that, because that's where you're going to get even more confused. Okay? Again, you're here and you're likely in the steam room because you're trusting me from my experience that I've made the mistakes in this, right? And what I'm telling you is when IV doesn't see a pop and sees a drop off a bet, a lot of the times it could be rolling from an existing position. It can be a seller when you think it's a buyer. Okay? Right. The market is saying they're expecting a bigger move. That's what it translates into, right? A positive move. Okay? I'll give you an example. If, again, we're going to talk about this, and when you have the questions, we'll talk about it even more. If we were looking for put sellers, okay? So opening put sellers, players that are coming in and writing puts to collect premium, we would look for the total opposite of this. We would look for players hitting the bids or below bid. We would be looking in a decrease in implied vol because they're selling. You understand? All right. So again, without you guys, especially some of you novices out there, you know, some of you guys new to this, you want to keep this stuff as simple as possible. Okay. And where you want to start is what I'm telling you now in regards to buyers. So tomorrow you want to go, you get in front of the screen, you see the order flow coming in, you're looking at sweeps going off on the offer. That's all pretty much we're focusing on with call buying and put buying. A pop in implied vol off that order flow. We'll look at some of the examples today to some of the top bets. And this is a big one too, okay? An opening order. This is, again, something you're not going to see on every single sweep that we're playing off of. All right? And what it means in simple English, this is all it means. When you see an order labeled opening, or you see me say opening sweep in square, all it means is that volume is greater than the open interest. Okay? Now, why is that significant? I'll give you some of the key reasons why. Let's put these all together. If we see sweeps and calls taking out offers, there's a pop in implied vol off the action, and the action is opening, meaning the volume is greater than open interest, now we have a pretty decent idea that that sweeper is opening a new position and calls in that underline, okay? If the volume wasn't greater than open interest, how do we know for sure it's not a call seller closing his position by buying back the calls? We would never know, right? Off the activity in front of us, we would never know. How would we know? Unless, you know, we remember prior action and stuff like that, right? You follow the name religiously, you know the open interest. Okay, but just looking at the flow on a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't know. All right. So when sweepers come into Tesla in the morning and they're hitting out of the money weeklies, you're not going to, and there's a ton of open interest in those weeklies, right? You're not going to hear me say that that order is clean. Why? Because, you know, I don't want to make up a guess that it's not a call seller closing his position by buying calls. You know? So we want to see opening new positions. And again, we're not going to always trade off action that meets these three every time. I'm being honest. I day trade a lot off orders that aren't opening. You know what I mean? But if you want to build a position in a name, right, you want to put decent risk out there and follow the order flow with a bet, you want to make sure you're playing off clean action. And that's the starting point from clean order flow. You know, so right here, right, you got this simple enough. Again, without understanding too much of the details, you can dive into it yourself. Google's a marvelous thing if you want to, you know, learn a lot more in depth of what exactly this all means. I'm telling you, you're better off not initially. Just understand what you need to look for and the most important reasons why, which I'm sharing with you tonight, okay? And start, you know, tomorrow when the market opens and flow starts coming in, start looking at the different type of action out there and what doesn't meet these three characteristics. And you will very easily start to follow along on what action excites me and I seem giddy about, and what action, you know, there may be a size bet that you don't really see me talk too much about. And the likelihood is one of these three reasons, one of these three reasons are involved. Okay, but this is what I mean by clean. This is what I mean by clean. No matter if the sweep pans out or not, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with being clean. Clean means that we can have confidence, we have conviction, that we have an idea what that order is trying to achieve. That's what clean means. All right? Anybody confused on what I mentioned? Forget about digging into the details on what I just mentioned so far. Why do we include negative IV sweeps in top bets? Because sometimes they'll be in key names that you guys are looking at. And when I look at the rest of the order flow, it looks like a buyer. You understand? So, and a lot of times you got to understand, in the money, like for example, in the money sweeps, a lot of times you will not see this. You know what I mean? Because they're deep in the money. All right. So me, you know, I'm digging into the flow. I can take it to an extra level, right? And start to really dig in and maybe refine that best guess. But for you guys, what I'm saying for you guys, right? If you wanted to set a scan for clean sweeper activity, right? If that's what you guys asked me that you wanted to do, this would be the scan to set, okay? Because if you don't put this in here, you're going to have a lot of non-directional stuff and misleading stuff in there. Yeah, exactly. Okay, and we're going to look at the action today and at the top bet list so we can see. But now, see, now that you have an idea, like K-Cramp is saying, I think it was K-Cramp, but now you can look at that top bet list, all right? And if it's action in a name you like, you know, you can see whether it's quote unquote clean or not according to those characteristics, okay? This is how you're going, no matter what, okay? On the fly especially, this is how you're going to be able to decipher what's clean and what's not. This stuff. All right, so now let's get to some of the good stuff, right? Clean action is great, okay? We want to dig from the pile of clean action for swing positions, right? But it doesn't end there, right? As far as the top action out there, right? Because there can be clean sweeps at the highs, at the lows, in consolidation, in uptrends. There could be clean sweeps all around the clock. All right. Initial activity, for me, again, this is another huge thing that really got me over the hump in regards to trading off the flow. All right. And you'll see when we talk about repeat activity, you know, the difference in how it could be a huge help. Okay. Now, what's tricky about initial activity is figuring out how do we know when it is quote unquote initial activity, right? Because what initial activity is, it's the initial round of buying that takes place when you just start to see sweepers in the name. Okay? MOXN, that name today, that's initial activity. PRTY, that wasn't initial activity. You understand? Initial activity is the first time that name sees action. Now, it doesn't have to be always, you know, the first time a name ever saw action. Obviously, the earlier the name sees action, you catch it, the better, okay? Because Wall Street's just starting to take recognition to the name. That's where some of the biggest winners start, right? A lot of you have seen that over the years, all right? But for me, from my experience, it has to, initial activity can only come out of consolidation or a pullback. MOXE, what did I say? I said the wrong symbol? MOXE, okay, today's action. This action today was the first action we ever seen in the name. Let alone forget consolidation or for sell-off, right? We never seen action in this name. Hell, we never even seen the name before. All right. And the beauty of initial activity, especially early on, is one, you know, okay, when they bomb it like they did in this name, you know it ends up being opening activity. Right? So now you got clean sweeper activity for the first time in a name, in MOXN. I keep saying MOXC. MOXE, forget it. I forget the symbol, okay? Whatever the symbol is. You guys get the idea. But you know what I mean? That was clean activity for the first time in that underlying. All right? A lot of times we won't see it in a name for the first time, okay? And what I've learned over my career is that you want to see, so let's say this, all right? Trip. I'll give you an example, okay? If many of you were around during the COVID bottom, Trip got tattooed off the COVID lows somewhere around here. Or maybe it was into the lows, wherever it was, okay? That was initial activity in Trip, okay? That was the initial buying in Trip. Then there were sweepers here, there were sweepers here, sweepers here, sweepers here, all over the place. This can't be initial activity, right? This is where the action first started to get aggressive in the name. So this cannot be initial activity. So for initial activity to kind of develop again, you need, and it's a lot with timing, there's no exact time, but you need a nice wash with some time or consolidation where the flow goes quiet, right? So the tempo of action almost grinds to a halt, and then it starts up again. Okay? That would be initial activity again in the name. So it's not necessarily just the first time, because think of it. Tripp has had, sweeper activity 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Can't be the first time ever in a name. It's not always going to line up like that. But the reason why initial activity is so important and significant, okay, is that we already spoke about the true edge from sweeper activity is that divergence, right? It's early in trend changes, right? It gives us a heads up on trend changes, reversals. Okay? The sweeper buying into weakness and consolidation tell us a lot more than the sweepers that are chasing strength. Okay? Another huge positive for initial activity, the rolling aspect. Okay? If Tripp gets bombed here off this disaster, this is the first time they bomb Tripp. We know players aren't rolling up and out profitable positions, right? So we know that this action that came in, this aggressive action that came in into these levels, is a fresh, clean, new buyer. We don't know the sweeps that followed. We know that the probability, the odds are that players are rolling at that point, right? There are higher odds now of players rolling as the stock appreciates. But the initial activity off of pull or consolidation, we can have a pretty good idea there's not any rolling involved. That's the beauty of initial activity. All right. It's usually, you hear me say this, the sweet spot entry. All right. It not only offers the greatest risk reward, okay, because of the aspect, like I explained to you guys, that divergence, trend reversals and reversals, that's where the real edge is out of the sweeper activity, right? That's where you get the biggest bang for the buck. But also, the drawdown, the initial drawdown at the least, is a lot less, okay? Because, and we're going to touch on this when we talk about repeat activity, if you're buying Tripp action up here and Tripp has been seeing sweeps all the way up, Tripp can pull back, right? And you have no idea, right? The action, it tells you nothing about that last batch of action. Where with initial activity, what you'll find many times, market permitting, of course, is that the drawdown from the level of initial activity is a lot less. You're a lot less underwater. There's a lot less of that drawdown risk. Okay, that's not to say the market doesn't roll over 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, and Tripp can't roll over with it. Of course, that's the risk with everything. But market permitting, you will notice that they hold that level of initial activity. They always seem, there's almost like a magnet there. They support it, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Right? So if you're not playing calls, it's a lot easier to figure out a stop loss. Or even if you're playing calls and you're using the stock to decipher your stop loss, right? If that's the way you're going about it, it's a lot easy to manage, right? You can make a healthy decision on where you want to put your stop loss. If you're buying, over repeat activity, 30 sweeps deep as the stock is running, where do you put the stop loss? To determine that round of action may be wrong. This stock can pull back, 10, 20% and still be in an uptrend and look great at that point, right? So it's not as efficient. But you'll realize off initial activity that they hold, that level, right? Obviously not always, but rarely are you significantly underwater. Again, market permitting. And right, the last point is what I basically just mentioned, right? Aside from the best risk reward and the least amount of drawdown, similar to the clean action, it allows you to be the most confident that it's fresh, new buying in the name and not players adjusting positions. That's the key to it all. All right. So if you're focusing on clean order flow, right, and initial activity, think about all the flow we see. Think about what you narrowed it down to now. Think about the difference as far as even just yourself, the conviction you can have in relying on that bet to risk your money. That's where you want, just like gambling, you want to place the money you're risking, you want to place your bets on the stuff you have the most conviction in, the most confidence in, right? So if you're playing off order flow, you want to narrow it down so your tailing sweeps that you are confident at least that sweeper is placing an aggressive bet on that name. Right? You at least want to do that when you're risking your own money. Exactly. Right? So clean order flow, initial activity, those are two things that will help out a great deal in pushing aside a lot of the mess. The spot. I use, like, when I first started to pay attention to flow, I never cared about the spot. I just cared about the size of the action or how unusual the action was. But the spot, right, we're always looking at charts or where the stock has been to decipher the spot. Why the spot's so important to me, and why you guys hear me talk about that a lot, is because it goes with the first two things we just went over, initial activity and clean order flow. For some reason, the spot always is there when that action, clean initial activity, shows up. Okay? So in other words, simply what I mean is this, okay? You realize over time the pattern of smart professional buying in the options market, okay? And where they show up places like this, when they come in initially and buy, as opposed to places like this. Okay, and that's what I mean by this spot. Okay, the best action almost always, when it meets the first two things we went over as far as clean order flow and being initial activity, when those two align, Not always, but most times it's going to show up at a quality risk reward spot where a lot of times you, me, and everybody else out there probably aren't too interested in buying the name. Sometimes we would be, but a lot of times it's tough to buy that name because it's coming out of some lengthy consolidation. The name has been dead, or it's off a nasty pullback and hasn't done a thing in forever. That's where the quote unquote sharp sweepers out there, that's where they accumulate positions. They're not doing it here, right? You're seeing weeklies, spec action, rolling, everything else but clean initial activity. All right. And again, it's not to say that it's guaranteed that whatever sees clean initial activity is going to go higher as soon as you buy it. But you're going to see more than not when you're focusing on the clean order flow at the right spots. Those are great entries. Those are great entries. All right, and that's why, a lot of times you don't hear me get too excited about a big, huge sweep up into the highs on a name that caught a ton of sweeper activity already. Because the order on the outside looks good, right? Wow, it's a big bet. Maybe it's even a clean bet. Looks clean. But at that spot, and not being initial activity, the likelihood is there's rolling involved. Because from my experience over the years, the pattern of buying from these professional players, they don't show up there in size to build a position. All right, so the spot's really important for me because it works hand in hand, really well with the first two things we talked about, clean initial activity, right? Trend changes, reversals. You're going to realize that those are the things, that's the real edge at a sweeper activity. That's the edge. We talk about this a lot, right? The buying that comes into strength later on, okay, doesn't have the same meaning than as opposed to the initial buying that first shows up. Players could be getting squeezed. Shorts, right? Shorts could be getting squeezed. So they got to hedge by sweeping calls. Players rolling profits, they're sweeping calls. But if a buyer's stepping in initially at a quality spot, the likelihood is they're only doing it for one reason, right? And the potential in trend changes and reversals, that's where the big moves happen, right? Even for those of you who trade the indices, right? Even for those of you who trade the indices, look at the reversal, over the last day in ES, right? This market has done nothing, absolutely nothing of racing here. But, paying attention to order flow early on in this reversal is a lot more important than up here off a rally. And we're going to spend more time on that when we talk about the different types of traders and time horizons, day trading, swing trading. So again, guys, some of this stuff is going to sound repetitive, but trust me, there's a reason why, repetition is key in a lot of this stuff. And you're going to see some of the main stuff show up more and more in everything we talk about. All right. So all this stuff, we're going to spend time on this throughout the whole entire course because it applies to everything we're going to talk about. And the same thing, right? The spot, just like initial activity, less drawdown. All right. If you're not chasing a name that's gone up 6 straight days in a row, and you're buying a name that's been consolidating, right? And you see the edge in just logically, right? Just logically. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example. But, and this is something if you tuned into webinars, those weekly webinars, we focused and spoke about this many times, right? If you have a stock that is in consolidation like this, okay? And it's quiet, there's hardly any order flow, and all of a sudden, somebody steps in here and is aggressively opening a new position in calls in the name. All right? Think of the edge you have there now, right? This thing was dead heartbeat, doing nothing. And all of a sudden, whether it's an institution, a hedge fund, a professional, out of the blue comes in and is aggressively sweeping calls in a name. That's your edge, right? If this thing had a 50-50 chance to go up or down out of that consolidation prior to the sweeper activity, what do you think the percentage is now with somebody aggressively coming in, risking their capital and calls? You know what I mean? And we talk about this. Some of you say, oh, 70-30 now, even if it's 60-40, whatever it may be, that's the edge in sweeper activity. It's definitely more than 50-50, right? We can agree on that. It's definitely more than 50-50. So that's how I look at it, even for day trading purposes. That's how I look, at sweeper activity for an edge. That's how I look at it. When something is already running, already has momentum to the upside, and has been seeing call buying and now is seeing more call buying, what is that really telling me? You know what I mean? Plus, I don't even know if that order flow is necessarily clean, because it could be prior buying rolling up, right? And for those of you who may not be familiar with rolling up, very quickly, all right, what the professionals like to do quite often in the options market, they don't sell to lock in profit, especially when they have size, right? When they want to catch a trend, a move, they'll roll up their position and roll out for more time. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say there's a buyer here of July calls in Roku. Okay, again, I'm just using random numbers. The 350s, July 350s in Roku. Okay, we see some action come in here. Now the stock pops. Okay, when the action is aggressive and when there's size, very rarely do they close out that position completely. Because what they want to catch that whole, if it's a trend reversal like we're talking about, they're not like us. They don't sell every little pop they can. Can't wait to get their money. They're trying to catch that big move. So what they'll do is they'll sell the July 350s and they'll go out and put some money in the August 375s. Okay? Into the pop. So now when we're seeing August 375 call buyers coming in, it looks like new buying coming into Roku, right? But in reality, it's just those smart sweepers. That's their form of profit taking. They roll, put a little in their pocket, roll up, roll out. Another pop here. Guess what they're going to do again? pay themselves a little bit, roll up, roll out. So as the stock continues to go higher and everybody's seeing more and more flow in it, they're like, oh my God, look at all the buying that's coming in now. That's so misleading. That's not new buying coming in. That's prior buying rolling up. So you see the importance in, deciphering the difference between the two? So that's why the spot plays a big part, because the probability, the odds of rolling, of the action that's coming in being rolled, go down, not up. When you're buying at quality spots, when you're tailing order flow at quality spots, the odds of that action being position adjustments or rolling go down. All right, repeat activity. And this is exactly, what we've been talking about. This, I think, buries a lot of, especially newer traders with order flow. I think a lot of people just don't realize what I just explained to you. Okay, so they could see a name like Roku active, but without paying attention to the fact that Roku has been active over the past 2 weeks. And the likelihood is today's action is not clean, fresh buying. The size that people are paying attention to, there's a high probability that that's rolling. And think of it logically too, right? Think of it logically. Would, quote unquote, the smart money, right? We were referring to this action as the smart money. Would they be coming in after the name has been littered with flow, buying late in the move? That's not too smart. So yeah, it's going to create momentum intraday, especially when everybody getting excited about seeing all that flow come in. You're going to see momentum, no doubt about it. But tells us nothing or nothing new about the potential for the name beyond that point. Okay? So again, the initial activity when you first start to see flow in the name, that's where your highest odds of success are. Okay? And another thing too, okay? There's a big, big difference between repeat activity at higher levels and repeat activity at lower levels or same levels. Okay? So what I mean by that is this. If Roku saw buying here, and now the stock has done this was initial buying, and now the stock came down to here and there's more buying, that's a strong signal, right? That's accumulation. Right? That's one of the stronger signals. Somebody did some buying here and now is showing commitment and coming in at a better price and adding to that position. It is drastically different than repeat buying up here at higher levels. Again, you think it's repeat buying. We call it repeat buying. Everybody on Twitter calls it buying, but in reality, it's not. But sometimes you just have to apply logic, right? Like I said, the action, the sweeper buying into weakness or consolidation tell us a hell of a lot more than the sweeper activity that's chasing strength. If a buyer came in here and this thing took a dip and now they're coming back for more, what are they telling us? Right? They're showing conviction, committed to the name. They believe in the name. Otherwise, they wouldn't come back here again. So it's two completely different things. Repeat buying at the same levels or into weakness, which is accumulation, as opposed to the flow we see chasing strength. Right? Accumulation is a very strong signal. And like I said before, right? Repeat buying, the main thing to understand, right? At higher levels, there's a higher probability that it's something else besides new buying. And that's not where you want to be placing your swing trade money. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know in reference to repeat buying at higher levels, right? If there's a higher probability of rolling and shorts hedging, I don't want to pick from that pile. Okay. Another thing we're going to talk about later on in the course, earnings season, right? It's just a simple point that during earnings season, we don't know what's an earnings bet or hedge and what's not. We have no idea. But just for the simple point alone that we know that hedging and stock replacement goes up drastically during earnings season. There's more of it. More people are hedging and replacing stock during earnings. It's a fact. That's more than enough reason to stay away from activity during earnings season for swing trades. Just based simply on that. Right? Again, the main goal, what we're trying to achieve, or reading order flow, we're looking for the cleanest action where we can feel confident that we have an idea of that fund or that player's bias. All right, the stuff I swing trade, the positions that I swing calls in, I don't want to have a question in my head whether I thought that action was an aggressive bull bet in the name. Nothing else. Nothing else. If I think it's an earnings hedge, why the hell do I want to swing that? If I think it's somebody rolling profits and taking a little profit on the, why the hell would I want to size up and swing that? You understand? I want to pick from one pile. That's it. And that's what allows you to stay disciplined too when swing trading options. And I'm sorry to fill you in on this though, but if you have any intentions of trying to find success, swing trading options, you better find some discipline and something that keeps you a little selective, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Right? So that's the main thing. I want to pick from a pile where it's got a high probability of being a clean belt. A clean belt. I'm reading Matt. A clean bet. Seatbelt, exactly, Matt. Right? A clean bet. That's what I'm looking for. Okay? The rest, like we're going to focus on later on, right? And I'm sure a lot of you are looking forward to that. I know you guys are. As far as day trading and swing trading, there are other things to do off the quote unquote not clean action. There's other stuff to do if you want to make it actionable and you want to try to make money off it. But swing trading positions, right? Swing trading a chunk of calls, you only want to do that off one type of activity. You know, the goods. The goods. Right? And like I say here, the repeat activity, all the rest. You think it's going to create momentum? Day trade it. Day trade it. There's no moment, right? Earnings play. You like the name. Seeing crazy flow. It's got earnings. After this Zoom, hopefully you understand why we're not playing earnings or any of that. Day trade it. Day trade it. Okay. Otherwise, you're lying to yourself and thinking that's a clean bet. And that's what a lot of people do. Let's face it, right? Let's face it. If, some people like the name and they want an excuse to buy calls in the name, and, they're going to find some excuse to buy it. And that's what's done. That's what's done a lot of time with flow. And that's all fine. That's all fine. But you're not trading off clean order flow when you're doing that. You're not win or lose. You're not trading off clean order flow if you're tailing repeat activity at higher levels. You're not doing it the right way. And again, if you think just common sense, right? Common sense. If every Apple sweep at any time, anywhere, you can make money more than you lose, the game doesn't work like that. Right? Every size Apple's order that goes off on the offer, you just follow it and make money? Wouldn't that be great? Right? So this on the bottom, I wanted to blow this up so you guys know, right? Just for like a quick reminder. Can I even do it on here? Blow it up? Let me see. Nah. Down here, okay? And basically, I don't know what I just did. All right, basically what it says here, the clean initial activity, right? Because this is what we're focusing on. Clean initial activity is a stronger signal than clean repeat activity, even if it's clean. So meaning, this is what that means. Oh, I got to find it. Oh, yeah. This is what it means, okay? There could be a clean sweep that we think that looks clean to us, right? So in other words, there could be an opening sweep across multiple exchanges and a pop in IV in Apple as a repeat bet. It's clean, okay? But the key thing to understand is that the clean initial activity is much stronger of a signal, not even close, than clean repeat activity, right? So that's the main takeaway from what we're talking about here. Okay, clean initial activity is a lot stronger of a signal than clean repeat activity. And clean initial activity at a quality spot is a lot stronger than clean activity late in a trend, even if it's not repeat action. If this was the first if the first Apple sweep we see, okay, comes in to this, you can't weigh it the same way as a potential sweep into this. Make sense? Right? Makes sense. Logically, it just makes sense. Now that we've gone over all this stuff. Okay? Because again, if you just remember that the biggest edge from sweeper activity is the change or in trend reversal of momentum. That's your biggest edge. With day trading, with swing trading, whatever it may be. That's the true edge from sweeper activity. It turns death magically into wokeness. Stock could be dead as a doornail. No intentions of going anywhere. All of a sudden, a little sweeper activity comes in and gives it a kick in the ass. That's the edge. Without a doubt. And relics, we're going to talk about that too. But without a doubt. Well, what relics is basically saying, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with the spot for him is probably looking at technicals, right? I mean, unless he likes chasing, which I'm sure he don't. Everybody knows chasing a move is not the right thing to do. It's just we're so effed up. We're wired the wrong way to play this game. We feel most bullish when things are already moving up. You know what I mean? That's the problem. We feel the best and most confident, most bullish when the momentum has already showed up and things are moving higher. And what I'm telling you, the edge of sweeper activity is the total opposite of that. It's giving you the heads up to a turn, or a potential turn, I should say. That's the edge of sweeper activity. And just understanding that, every time you look at a name catching action, just understanding that. My real edge, is in reversals and trend changes. If the momentum's already here and this thing's already hot, obviously there's not as significant of an edge off the sweeper activity. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? And the strongest signal, which we made the example earlier, I think it got chopped off here. Oh, maybe I can't see it here. That's why. Hold on. The strongest signal, here it is, of them all, right on the bottom there. Clean buying at a quality spot, and they keep coming. Can I? Let's see. Oh my God. You see how bad I am, K-Cramp? You see it, right? You see it, right? All right. As long as you see it. All right. So, and again, I want to make sure everybody understands that. Okay. One of the strongest signals that you're going to come across in regards to flow, all right, is clean order flow that they keep coming after at or a better spot in the name. The more they come, the stronger the signal. All right? If they keep coming and hit Nuon every time it gets to a level that they like, that's as strong as the signal as you're going to get. No matter whether that bet works out or not, that specific time is irrelevant. Because I'll tell you one thing. If you could stick to, and it's day trading or swing trading, it's just different time frames, okay? But if you could stick to one thing, like if you asked me to stick to one thing in order to find success, right? You just want to be selective. You want to be disciplined, one type of action. That's the action that I would tell you. Okay? So what that entails, and think about it, it's not an easy thing to do. You got to have patience. That's why, it's so worth your while to do it, and it takes discipline. Okay? You don't fire, or at least a full position, you don't fire off the initial action, right? So Nuon, you wouldn't have bought it when the first time they came into it. It's when they came back a second, a third time. That's what made Nuon different than everything else. Not the first round of action was good looking in Nuon. There was nothing wrong with that. The bet was beautiful. But what made Nuon, but I'm talking like everybody knows Nuon. What made the action in Nuon so much more special than everything else is because what happened was this Nuon went into this consolidation, right? Nobody wanted software stocks, higher rates. They came in, they bought it, I think, off the Niner, right? Little pop back down here with time, with some time, okay? They came back, they bought it again off the dip. Had a nice little rally, came back down again, they bought it again, they bought it again. All right, and I think they bought it again here. And then they got bought out. All right, you see that there was no other reason. And now, now that it was a winner, it's easy for us to all see how it played out, right? But in the heat of the action, it wasn't that easy. A lot of us played it, sold it, traded it, got stopped out on it, the whole 9 yards. But they kept coming after a software name when nobody wanted to buy software, period. It was the only software name, basically, that they were aggressively coming after. Right? So the order flow only meant one thing. Now, it didn't have to catch news, but, it only meant one thing. That buyer had conviction. He could have been wrong, but don't you want your money on that side? Right? Don't you want money on that side as opposed to risking your money in Apple weeklies after a move? That's where you want, that's where you want to take the most risk on your money in regards to flow. And again, the sweeper was buying it when it was tough to buy. It wasn't easy. I mean, the stock was consolidating nicely off a big move, but it was so hard to buy. So hard to buy. They were rolling over one by one. So you're not going to see action like this every day, obviously. But I'm making the point, like, that is the cream of the crop. That's the cream of the crop, okay? And, for day trading, we're going to spend more time in the different time frames, but it's the same thing. Like, one sweep for a day trade can mean anything. But when you see a round of action come in, especially at the right spot, those are going to be your best day trades. Those are going to be your best day trades. And like I said, we're going to spend more time on that as far as the different time frames so you guys understand it. But it's really, it's that simple. And maybe it sounds simple to me, but it's that simple. Clean action, and you want to choose from the pile that you can feel confident that they're placing an actual bet. All right, so let's look, right? On that note, let's look at today's action. And you guys will probably be able to tell, the positives and the negatives behind it all, right? All right, so we got Fang. By the way, the action in Fang today was bonkers. That thing, that has to be an institution or something that came into Fang this afternoon. All right, has to be. This was one of the sweeps. They came in with call spreads. You can see on the bottom here. Okay, they came in with call spreads and they came in with risk reversals. So as far as clean, what do you guys think? Pop and IV, check. Check. Multiple exchanges, check, check. Opening, check, check. So you can't, no matter what, without looking at spots or anything else, you know that this is legit. It's legit. So now the only issues that you're going to have after seeing that now is looking at whatever it is you're looking at. For me, it's spot and whether it's initial activity or not. We know it's not initial activity because we've seen some good looking sweeps in FANG when oil got hot, right? So it's not initial activity, but the stock had some consolidation. It's not off a huge rally. So that decreases the odds of rolling, right? Possibly, but still not initial activity. All right. So you got to, right there, you got to take the action down now. So now you got a clean bet. It's a repeat bet in a name. And the spot, is not awful. We've seen worse. You got a little breather here. Okay. But for me, it doesn't meet everything for me. The order flow does. The order flow that's the type of flow I want to be choosing from. No doubt about it. Okay. But it's just the fact that there's been action in the name. The name has been rallying. If you remember, anybody remember the prior sweeps in FANG by any chance? Anybody trade this name by any chance? I know there was some good looking order flow in this name. There were a couple big sweeps. Oh, Oxy. Well, Oxy too. But when they were buying Oxy and all that stuff, FANG caught a couple beauties. We could probably search it in the steam room. September 90s, Tony. That sounds familiar. And when was that around? That was what? You have a month maybe? Or look at Tony pulling out. September 90s. Look at months ago or a month ago? Not too long ago? Not too long ago? All right. So there you go, right? So now you know what I mean? And you could compare it to some of the other orders that we're going to see, right? But FANG, and this will happen late in the day. December sweep, a beauty, call spreads, ridiculous size. I'm not even a call spread guy. You guys know that. But ridiculous size. And a little risk reversal to boot. So that tells you they're real dudes in the name. Okay? They're real dudes in the name. Next one is Coin. Okay? Now, Coin doesn't say opening on here, but I called it out and labeled it opening. I wanted to make sure it opened. It opened. So in other words, there was other buying that came in with this action, and it was greater than just the 511 open interest. This was almost there. Okay, so this wasn't labeled opening, but I called it out opening activity. Wow, that's big wood. Multiple exchanges, swept, greater than offer, yes. Pop in IV, check. Is it somebody rolling up profits? No way, right? He's got no profits to roll up. There's no profits in this name to roll up. So there you go. You got a clean Jan sweep in Coin that checks off all the boxes. All right, so here's an example of that accumulation I'm talking about. Let's say 2 days, yeah, Coin's initial activity. So let's say Coin hangs here, and all of a sudden we see that same Jan line get hit again. All of a sudden this action becomes that much more special, right? So if you're not sold on coin or they're Jans, you know this stock could be a pain in the ass with Bitcoin. You may want to hold off and see how much conviction that player has. Right? If they come back, that's showing some conviction, some confidence in the name. But coin checks all boxes. PRTY, we know already it's not initial activity, right? This stock caught a lot of action. I can't believe it. Sick move. There are a ton of profits in this name. All right. So that's one thing that's a problem already, right? Is, the spot's not awful because you got a little breather there, but you're buying a stock that's gone from 2 to 10 and has seen multiple sweeps over the past 6 months to a year. Multiple. And it's at higher levels than all those sweeps. All right. As far as the order is concerned, sweep, multiple exchanges above the offer, IV, nice pop, opening activity, clean. It just, the risk is that it may roll a profitable position. So in simple English, one of the buyers, one of the many buyers from this rally could be just rolling out some size to January now. Could be even maybe taking profits off the order for all we know. That's the risk. Roku, we don't have to, we know Roku. Roku, I wish this was initial activity. It's been a monster. All right. But as far as a bet, it's a good looking bet. Like, look at this. You think this, who do you think is sweeping this though? You know what I mean? Like, who's sweeping this? Who's sweeping this? The only problem is that it could be repeat activity rolling, but they either are or already have been betting on the name. They're not betting on momentum. They're not betting on Powell tomorrow. They're not betting on anything but the name. They believe in the name. They probably are accumulating an equity position and they're going into the option market to utilize leverage. Right? That's what these bets are. Now, this guy here, right? We were talking about in the room today. These are 2 sweeps out of, I don't know how many hit today. But look at it. Look at the cash they're dishing out. All opening activity. I mentioned to you guys that not only opening, they're opening the largest position of open interest. So this is the largest amount of activity in the name in open interest. And they're aggressively, right? Multiple exchanges, IV popping out the ass. They're aggressively buying, not some speculative line for 20 cents. They're coming out and dishing some cash. I honestly, I had no idea what the name was. I'm going to day trade off the action every single time I see action like that. I don't care what the hell's going on. But for swing trades, I was asking you guys, I don't know if this was a SPAC. I don't know what the hell this thing is. 20 plus sweeps. Right, Chinese stock. I don't know what the hell it is. So that's the only reason, I didn't take a nice healthy shot to swing. But as far as the order flow is concerned, right, checks off all the boxes. Right off this action here. Right off this action here. I didn't even put the other bets on here. This was on from the morning. Like this is all I saw. As far as the sweeps, there were smaller sweeps around it. These were the top two size ones at the time. All right, so here's a good one here. And honestly, guys, I'm not 100% sure, and this is the problem. Snow, right? This is a name a lot of people want to see action in right now. All right? So you got nice size bet, dishes out, nice premium across multiple exchanges, opening. You see that? That's the problem. I don't like the fact that this happened off this type of order. Might be a seller. Could be rolling. I didn't see anything close at that time, but that doesn't matter, So, but, if this looked like this, that would have been a really interesting bet. Really interesting bet. Spot is decent, right? Yeah, that's what so like I said, day trading wise, you can day trade it all. You know what I mean? Any impressive size order you can day trade. But, do we want to swing trade a name that, in a name that there's a chance that this is not legit? Yeah, Wish was a nice one for me too today. But I've been playing Wish a lot. I played it the other day too, and it didn't really do too much, but today was nice. So now let's see. Let's see. Hopefully there's more action. That's ultimately what it comes down to. When you're unsure, right? When you're unsure, you want to see more action come in, and it only will strengthen the signal. And this is something I'm going to talk about later in the course when we talk about day trading, swing trading. If you're using flow with technical analysis or something else, you could still trade off this action. But if you're trading off the order flow itself, you can't. You can't. Make sense? Like if you like the technicals and basically all you were looking for is something to give Snow a kick in the rear end, momentum-wise, you can trade. You can, because you're betting not just on the flow being legit, you're making a portion of that bet's coming on your technical analysis, right? And we're going to talk about, like, if you're doing that, if you're using order flow with something else you have confidence in, you don't need to be as strict as I am, because you're doing homework elsewhere and you're looking for one thing: momentum. You know what I mean? And we're going to spend some time on that so you understand that. But if you're trading off order flow itself, swing trading off order flow itself, you want to pick from the cream of the crop. All right? This game is tough enough. When you pick from the cream of the crop, and that's one piece of advice. Usually I would save it for like the end of this course. If you're not finding success trading off something else like Elliott waves or Fibonacci's or technical analysis or a watch list that you do the work on, if you're not finding success or consistency, before you hang up the cleats, I definitely recommend trading off sweeper activity, and we didn't even get into it, sentiment itself. Because you didn't give it a legitimate shot. It could have been that other half that you were looking at that was getting in the way of consistency. Whatever it may be. It's, I mean, your best way, Roberts, to actually just Google the definition, and they could probably break it down into simple English better than I can. Basically, it's just an implied move. Right? So when there's a plus, they're expecting a positive move. Right? So that's what IV's implied volatility. Right? So you see, like with earnings names, like when names go into earnings, you see elevated implied vol. Because of earnings, they're factoring in a larger move. Like what was the name that saw put selling today? Anybody remember? There was a couple put sellers out there today. There was a decent name that saw some put selling. Where was it? God, my brain is fried too, Matt. Was that today, STNE? Let's see. Yeah, that's not a good example of it, though. Trying to think, there was one that was pretty Roku. Oh, wait, no, I can't think right now. But anyway, look here. Maybe we can make it out of here. Nah, that's a bad example. Let me see. I just want to show you guys MP. I think it was MP. MP was one of them. Hold on. Okay. All right. So MP, the problem with MP that I listed here was I didn't know if it opened or closed, right? So I didn't know if it was a put seller selling puts, closing the put position, or writing puts, okay? But it was definitely a seller, okay? How do I know? Not only bid, there could be buyers on the bid, but implied vol. Okay, so there are exceptions. You know what I mean? There are exceptions, but when you want to be sure, right? Like I give you that example, if you want to set a criteria and the names that get spit out, you can have conviction, high confidence that they're clean. This is the easiest way to do it. The easiest way to do it. Oh, man. Repeat activity. Yeah, names. And, you know, a lot of times I'll see rolling in the name. How do I open this? I can't even open these. Hold on. Let me see if I can't even open these things. But yeah, from memory, Trade Alert or does a good job where you can go back and see prior orders in the name. So that helps too. Hold on. Let me see if I can open it on here. The hell? What are the questions? Keep going. I went. Oh, look, see, this is what I mean. Remember I was telling you guys? Now look, I got to refresh. Oh, here we go. What is this? I don't know what that is. Oh, here we go. Is buying for the money, say after earnings, they will probably sell before earnings. They think the price will hit the strike. When smart money, Jules, when smart money is making a high conviction bet on a name, they're not going far out of the money. It's just not how they play. If they have confidence in the name, they're dealing with other people's money. They're not shy about dishing out money. And they want a high delta. In other words, they want to get a bang for their buck if they're right. They're not going to go far out of the money and risk a stock appreciating but not enough and them losing money in a high conviction play. So a lot of times they're going to stay in, at, or close to the money. And you got to look at it this way. When hedge funds, institutions, the big guys out there, when they come into the option market, aside from hedging purposes, they're just looking to utilize leverage. So that's not the only exposure they have. They probably loaded up in equity, and now what they want to do is they want to come into the option market and utilize some leverage by buying calls in the name. The out of the money flow that we see on a day-to-day basis is speculation, trading, rolling the dice. Yeah, you know what? Let's roll the dice on some out of the money calls that Powell's going to be dovish tomorrow. That's that action. But we got to accumulate this PayPal here over the next couple of weeks because this thing is severely undervalued. They're not going out of the money and cheap short-dated calls to that. Because one, cheap short-dated calls, they're an outright gamble, right? If you really are bullish on PayPal, the company, the last thing you want to do is go into short-dated, cheap out-of-the-money calls. Because PayPal, the company, has the least amount of influence on those calls, right? What does the market do over the next week? What does the sector do? How's the momentum in the group? The market could sell off for 2-3 days, which has nothing to do with PayPal as far as the company is concerned, and you lose all the money on the calls. But even worse, they don't even care about losing the money, but they're not going to benefit off the conviction they have on PayPal, So a lot of times, you'll see these high conviction bets, they look like this, big wood, big premium. They're not scared to dish that out. And the beauty of sweeper activity is that the chances that this is tied to stock is minimal and none. If this was a block, the likelihood is it replaces stock. And it comes in probably replaced as tied, you know? But when they're aggressively sweeping a line like this, and they did in Roku, I don't know what the final volume was in here, but, you know, or MOXC, they're only doing that for one reason and one reason only. So that's, you know, again, it's a bet. Cheap out of the money calls are a bet, but it's a bet. It's a different type of bet. The sweet spot versus day trading in the overall market right now. This is coming from someone who's learning and not making enough money to trade. So, well, we're going to talk about the two different types, basically two different types of trading, right? The position trading and day trading. Okay. But basically, for day trading purposes, you're only looking for one thing, momentum. Right now, nothing else matters. That's it. You understand? So any of these bets, if you're day trading off of it, you're asking the question, can coin light a fire? Can coin get market makers moving? And again, we'll talk about this. You know, we're going to need one whole Zoom to talk about this in depth. But can coin create some momentum? Not 2 weeks from now. Today, right now, if I'm day trading. You don't care what it does 3 weeks from now. And that's all you're asking yourself. So like if you're day trading MOXC, you don't care what the hell this looks like a week from now. You know, will this get people fired up and create enough momentum where I'm getting in early and I can sell it to them higher? That's your day trade. So your edge off of the flow for day trading is different than swing trading, position trading. When you're swing trading positions, you want this bet to be right. You need whoever's placing this bet to be right. Day trading, you don't need it to be right. Right? I mean, snow. Okay? If you like the setup and you think this sweep, $2 million sweep, whether you're sure it's clean or not, but it can create some momentum now for you to even get a scalp out of it, that's all you're looking for. Right? Or Wish. Same thing. Company could be the biggest piece of shit on the face of the earth. All these call buyers could go up, poof, broke. But when they're coming in one after the other, after the other, after the other, there's going to be momentum there. There's going to be momentum there. You know, it's just how much momentum do you need to see to cash a ticket? You're looking to just scalp? There's a high likelihood you're going to get a scalp out of it when they're coming in rapid fire like that. Okay, and again, I wanted to save this for a webinar, you know, a Zoom in itself. But all you got to do, for those of you like the person who just asked that, who asked that? I don't know where it went. Whoever asked that question, who's just watching right now, which I think is a great thing to do. I think it's a great thing to do if you're trying to understand this. Okay? Sit there without any money at risk, and every time you see some action come in, right, and you see me adding some commentary, like there's multiple bets, you see me, multiple posts from me, pull up an intraday chart. Pull up a 1 minute chart. Pull up a 1 minute chart and watch and see what happens. You'll see it all the time. Instant life. Instant momentum. Stock could be dead as a doornail. If a band of sweeper activity comes in, you're going to see life. It's a matter of how strong of life and how long the life lasts. That's what it comes down to. But there's going to be life. The buying, that's how the market works, guys. More buying than selling. When a band of buying comes in, you're going to see upward momentum. You could see it all in a 1 minute chart. You see it all, every detail. You see it all. For day trading, you're not going to see, what are you going to see? The impact off an hourly chart? You're not going to see it. 1 minute chart. I'm not saying trade off 1 minute charts. I'm saying you will see what the edge of day trading off sweeper activity is off a 1 minute chart. You can't miss it. You can't miss it. Because the stronger the action that comes in, right? The more sweepers that come in, you're going to see volume erupt. And you're going to see the stock dance. SSR short sale restriction. You're going to see it dance. Now, we're going to spend more time in this. I know, we're all eager to get all this stuff all at once. But it's a good starting point to start to see where at least you'll see the edge in real life. There's no other indicator on the face of the earth where you're going to see an instant reaction to an edge. Nothing. Give me an indicator. Nothing. You know what I mean? Nothing. A sweep followed by a block. What happens is this market, everything gets front run. So what you'll see is if there's a 3 million or 4 million size negotiated block that's coming in, you'll see a small little sweep get in right before the block. And you know what happens? The sweep paid $1. The block paid $1.50, and the sweeper made a free 50 cents. You know what I mean? So you want to see the bulk of the action. You want to see sweeper activity. You don't want to see you don't want to see 2 big blocks go off and then a 200 lot sweep that came in right before it. Yeah, he was just front running the order, But if you see multiple sweeps and there's a block in the midst of a flow, that's fine. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. A lot of times you'll see algo sweeps front run everything. News, you know what I mean? Everything. That's what that basically is. But, you will see. Because if you don't know what the edge day trading, the sweeper activity is, then how are you going to trade to benefit off it day trading wise? You know what I mean? Every sweep that comes in, okay, and depending on the name, right? If Apple catches a small sweep, you're not going to see an impact. But on a name like this, that catches those 2 sweeps or whatever sweeps throughout the day, this is what you're going to see all the time. You see the volume? Sweeps. All the volume bursts were sweeps in this name. All of them. People paying attention. I see a lot of day traders paying attention to spikes in volume all the time. They're all generated off sweeper activity, but they're not following sweeper activity for some reason. which makes no sense. You know, isn't it more important to know what created the volume jump? You know, or sweepers ahead of a chatter or a rumor, or algo sweepers ahead of news. You know, the problem with that action is it gets quicker and quicker. Like, you barely have any time on some of those algo sweeps. You know, but legitimate buying, just accumulation in a name. Like even here, 6. All right, it wasn't the biggest bet in the world. And it came in early morning when the market was raging. Why is my volume so light? You know, but you could see the volume spikes anytime that caught a little play. This was right off the open. Right here. Was it? Oh. You know, all right. But the moral of the story, again, off today, what we went over today, because you don't want to put too much on your plate at once, so you get a grasp and you understand it. You know, I know, trust me, I know we're all, you're eager to get everything, so it's like you're seeing a different animal, you know. But that's why we wanted to break up the course into weeks, because you want to be able to focus and understand it, see it in real time. Right? I'll help you understand it, and then try to put it all together with your trading style. The most important of it all. Where the hell am I? Oh. All right. But so now you know the clean action. When I say clean, right, and you hear me get excited about an order, what it means. Right? You know the 3 things to look at instantly, even on your own, to determine how much you can believe if the order is a clean bet or it may be a roll or whatever. And the spot. You know, if you're not using flow with something else that you have confidence in, and that's the key thing, you have confidence in. If you're not, get used to looking at high risk reward spots. You know, and that's again, the one of the main goals of this course was to get you to be able to decipher what action is actionable, should be actionable to you. Right? My gut instinct, exactly. Well, that's, if people don't know what to look for, I'm sure that applies. But, start looking at the spots. Start looking at the spots. And the reason being is, remember that, your biggest edge out of the sweeper activity are reversals, trend changes. That's where the sweeper activity gives you an edge. The biggest edge, I should say. The biggest edge. That's where you can be early if you're sick and tired of being late. Right? I mean, how many of you have told me that's one of your problems, being late? So now you have something to add that seatbelt that I keep talking about. Prevent you from being a degenerate and firing at stuff you really shouldn't be firing at. You know what I mean? Any last questions before we wrap it? The hell did I do? You leave me alone, I can get lost switching screens on a computer better than anybody else. I don't even know where I am sometimes. Fishy, what do you got? What's your question? How come sweeps coming crazy at the end of the day like JD? I don't know, but that was interesting. No, weeklies. Hey, look. What's this? Look at this. Look at that. Maybe an upgrade, maybe news. Who knows? But he's looking for a move now. So tomorrow off the open, I would keep an eye on the JD action. Again, speculative action. We already know JD's catching big action. We know that already. So we don't need to see any more of that. But I'm talking about even for like day trading purposes. If this stock doesn't gap up on any news, even if it's down, even better. You see some weeklies come in, it's worth a shot for a day trade. No doubt. If you had more, if you had the time at the end of the day, it was worth a shot today. If this came in an hour earlier, it was worth a shot without a doubt today, right? They tattooed weeklies in the last 10 minutes. Yeah, it could be an upgrade, Jules. Many times I see that. Many times. Yeah, they went nuts. Look, did you see the volume on that line? When it was here again, I'm lost. Hold on. Band the sweepers into the bell. Like, I don't even know where it finished up at. Was this? Oh, yeah, this I posted after the total there. 15,000 in 10 minutes. Kathy's buying the daylights out of it. I know. And, I told you guys, I sound like a broken record. If this wasn't a Chinese name, this flow is picture perfect. I know it sounds foolish, but you're going to have to deal with China Agita unless you get lucky and catch news. It's a pain in the ass. They're tough, these stocks, these Chinese stocks. Yeah. And JD is a real company too, It's not like, JD's one of the better China plays. Exactly, quote unquote real. Exactly. But these China stocks, you roll the dice no matter what action in these Chinese names. You know that. You could get Muddy Waters out of the blue come out and say, oh, their numbers are fugazi, right? They're all bullshit. And the stock is down 3. That's not realistic. You can see that happening like that. You're funny, Matt. Coin, if I see they start accumulating this coin, those Jans, somebody mentioned it in the other chat. I'll buy it. I'm looking to buy it. I'll tail some Jan action there. And anticipate being early. And if they keep pounding, I'll add. If they keep coming in, I'll add. But maybe get lucky, Bitcoin turns and coin turns. Could happen that way. But anyway, it's a clean Jan bet. So if you were interested in the name, you should have your eyeballs on it, at the least. You should have your eyeballs on it at the least. ABNB, it's been more short-dated activity. So for me, that would be more, trying to utilize the equity. with a stop, that type of thing. But there's definitely flow there. You know, there's a lot of names, guys. There's a lot of names in this the studded growth group that is seeing some decent action, short dated and longer term. Sumo's been looking good, right? I'm surprised they never came back. I can't blame them either, though. I can't blame them. But especially in this environment, you know, swing trades, period, they're going to be tough. The likelihood is if you try to catch that larger move, you got to sit through pullbacks, especially if the rotation continues. That's the problem. You get a pop, you overstay your welcome, they start rotating the other way, it goes right back to where it started, right? Trip. Exactly, trip. Had a nice pop. All of a sudden, here we go, rotation out into growth, and trip came right back to where it started. You know, so like for me, if I was trading trip tactically, short term, that's where I would buy the equity and I'd have a stop loss and I would sell that rip. You know what I mean? With the equity. No, me either, but I wasn't looking to be. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't looking to be. Like it's something I wanted to hold. So, you know, you get caught with rotation in the other direction, and that's what's going to happen. But that's a lot of stocks, you know, a lot of stocks. If you nipped this growth trade in the butt, a couple of the early names, you know, you had a nice move, but those things have been out of favor for a long time now. So that's why the move has been so strong. You know, but here now, who knows? Who knows? You know, these things can run a little bit more and then go into a little consolidation again. And they rotate into reopening. Very possible. You know, very possible. We'll see. You know, we'll see. It's just been a tough climate right now. Even more the reason to be more selective on positions in swing trading. You know? Yes. Yes, Matt. Is that rhetorical? That's a rhetorical question. All right, my friends. I'm starting to lose my voice here. Yeah, we're gonna spend a lot of time from this point on. We're gonna dive into sentiment. Obviously, that's very important for those who aren't trading individual names and stuff like that, especially who are trading the overall market, and even this type of market. You know, short-term sentiment helps out a lot for trades, entries, and stuff. All right, and we're going to focus on time frames and what action to pay attention to. Right? Because like I said, my main goal, I can't teach you how to trade. That's, you know, I would be bullshitting you if I said that. What I can, my goal is to get you guys out of here with a plan to look at the right stuff for what you're trying to do. And if you manage your money properly, you know, and don't mimic Wall Street bets and all that bullshit, yeah, I feel you'll have enough to hang around and get better and better at what you do, and that's going to mean more consistency, and you're going to see it in your P&L. But you're going to have that quote-unquote seatbelt, so you're not just randomly picking names, you know, action and names for whatever reason. All right, guys, have a good night, get some rest, and let's see what this flow looks like tomorrow. Yeah, be good, guys.